name is Chiquanaquat. That means meteor cloud who rushes in with a sound and makes it clear. And my Czech-Gashi name is Mike Hoffman, my English name.
Okay.
And I'm Menominee and Ottawa descendant, and I'm the cultural consultant and advisor to the Menominee clan story, which is housed here at the Albertson Learning Resource Center, or the Museum of Natural History,
Okay.
library, whatever you choose to call it.
Okay.
And my primary function was to be brought in to transform the English into Menominee, because my cousin James Frechette Jr. was the carver of all the clans figures you see out here, and the walnut figure, the 4-foot walnut figure, there in the morning song, as when Menominees rose years ago, they sing the morning song. Some people still have a little bit of it going, but not too much anymore. So that was my function, being brought in as a language person. Well, my cousin Jim took ill, and he knew his days were numbered. And he needed somebody to be the cultural consultant and advisor to the university here. Now, I don't mean any offense to non-native people, but you know nothing of when it comes to Menominee culture or any other Native American culture. It's pretty much the other side of the coin. You know, we have a word, apetesiwan, which means power. It means you accumulate power. Now, if I asked you, how would you do that? And you'd say, well, by capturing a bunch of horses or getting a bunch of scalps or something. People always talk about that kind of stuff. Or having a bunch of money in the bank. Wrong. Total opposite. Apetesiwan is power accumulated by gifting, doing for others. Like doing this interview here for free. But we're helping out. We're helping out. And it would seem when you open a door for a little old man, a little old lady, you'll be rewarded later. If you've ever heard of a potlatch, a giveaway, like the Athabascans would do and some of the Northwest people, they throw these huge feasts. And the family would gather all their riches and all the food they could accumulate, and they would work on things. And maybe this potlatch would be thrown for their daughter who was reaching her time when she would become a woman. And maybe she was getting married or something, some monument to this occasion, wouldn't just do it for nothing. Well, all the people would come and they'd all be fed and gifts would be given out. And the white Indian agents said, well, these crazy Indians, they give everything away. Here, you give them something, they give it all away. Well, we believe in sharing. And that is how you get a apetesiwan. That's how you get that power, is by doing for others. And then at your time of need, when you need something, it'll happen for you. So that's just a little background on why I'm doing this and why I agreed to help. My cousin Jim said, rather than keeping the culture hidden and not let anyone know who we are, what we're about, it'd be better to share it. And then we'd fare better in the white man's world because we're swallowed. Like Jonah and the whale. We were just swallowed, consumed by the visitors. That's why I'm doing this in English, not in the Menominee language, which I could do, but no one could understand me. Not even 99% of the Menominees. One of the last speakers, we're down to about maybe 10 speakers. It's pretty sad. It's a very difficult language. But my main purpose was to walk people through the clans exhibit in the absence of my cousin Jim Frechette, and explain to them what the clans were about, why the bear was in the east, why the golden eagle was in the west. You know, what those are the two primary clans that started out. You might see the great light-colored bear and the golden eagle flying above. Well, we call that the Genesis. You know, when the great light-colored bear came out of the earth at the mouth of the Menominee River, well, he was alone, and he talked to the Creator and said, I wish to transform myself. I'm not happy with being lonely. And the Creator said, okay, you can do this. So he became the first Menominee. And he said, but I'm still lonely. And he looked up, and the golden eagle was flying up above. And he called up to him and said, come down and be my brother. And the golden eagle descended, and he became the second Menominee. I know people say this is crazy talk. You come from a bear, you come from animals. Well, the Creator allowed this. And God can do anything. God can change a handful of dirt into a human being. He picked up a handful of dirt, and he blew into it, and he made a man. And he plucked out a rib and made a woman, right? In some people's religious thinking. So why not transform a bear into a human being? So I walk, that's kind of what I do. I explain the culture. And it's kind of hard to do in a limited amount of time, because you're talking about thousands of years. Ever since the ice receded, we've been here. We were here before the ice, and then went south and the ice came, and then drifted back and the ice left. That's a long, long time. And as I went on here, as cultural advisor and consultant to the Menominee Clan story, not project. My cousin Jim was real adamant about that. He said, it's not a project, we're not inventing this, it's already happened. And people look at those little figures there and they go, where are the Menominees? And I said, you're looking at them. We don't cleave ourselves from the natural world as visitors do. We don't say dominion over the animals. They're our brothers, and they're our sisters. And we relate to them as our equals. So that's why we make offerings and say prayers. If we take their life, it better be for a darn good reason, not for a trophy. I mean, this place, I think it's a great teaching tool, but I happen to know for a fact that a lot of these creatures here were shot by great sportsmen, just for a trophy. And we consider that wrong. So anyhow, it's hard to explain all these things to people, and I found it real difficult. And then people ask too, well, what does this mean? What does that mean? What do these towns mean? Back when I was a kid, I lived in Nakusa, and I always wondered, what does that mean? I had Ho-Chunk friends there, Winnebagos, Ho-Chunk friends. And I asked them, and they said, swift-moving water. Well, there were these fake stories of Chief Nakusa and all that. There was no such a being, and the place meant swift-moving water. And it's Ho-Chunk. It's not Menominee. It's not Potawatomi. It's not Cree. It's not Ojibwa. It's not Sauk Fox. It's not Oneida. It's not Shawnee. You know, it's Ho-Chunk. Their language. That's using their language. So I said, well, what would it mean in Menominee? What do all these other towns mean? They're all Indian names. I was very interested. So when I was old enough and had enough education, and I was lucky, I had some relatives who had been like underground speakers. They wouldn't give up the language, because at one time it was against the law to talk the language. And when they took you to boarding school, they would immediately chop everybody's hair off, well, which wouldn't bother me any. But when you're young, it's pretty traumatic. Men or the boys and the girls, cut their hair, put them in uniforms, and demand that they spoke English only. If you're caught speaking in the native language, they washed your mouth out with soap and beat you and everything else. It was pretty brutal. And you were taught the way of the white man. You know, so some of my relatives, though, spoke the language at home and underground. You know, it was. So I was real lucky that way. I got to go work with a couple of them, and I researched all the place names. You see the map out there, the Wisconsin place names. Wisconsin, Wisconsin. It is a good place. Everything necessary for life is here. That's what it means. But people didn't like Wisconsin. They said, well, it's, you know, sounds funny. And the French said, Wisconsin, Wisconsin, you know. They changed it, and then the English came along and said, nah, frogs are saying it wrong, you know, it should be Wisconsin, you know. So it just got all changed around from its original meaning. But I found that out, confirmed it with speakers who had never seen a book, you know, they never studied out of books or anything. They just knew the language from years and years, and their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents just knew it as Wisconsin. And even Menominee, we called ourselves Kayas Mamachitawak, the ancient movers with the seasons. So I was very interested to somehow do a map. And I thought, well, I'll get some butcher paper, spread it out on the kitchen table, and I'll take colored pencils and I'll make a map of the area. There wasn't a Wisconsin. It was just an area. We didn't have a magic line in the sand. And that said, well, you can't go here, can't go there, you own this. We didn't, the concept of owning land and owning a river was insanity. How can you own a river and the fish just goes right by? He doesn't see your magic line. You know, so anyhow, I sat down and I said, well, I'll use the outline of Wisconsin for reference points so people will actually know what we're talking about. Because if you left that out, it would be just be this vast area. And slowly but surely I accumulated the names of all the places that were significant and important enough to be kept as Menominee names. There were tons of villages and this site and that site that just went away. But the bigger places like Manawa, Milwaukee, you know, a place where something bad is sure to happen. Chicago, place of the skunk. You know, and I just kept all these places all the way up to like Mackinac, you know, Makana Manasseh, which means Turtle Island, Mackinac. You know, way over to Minnesota. There were a couple areas there and into lower Michigan a little bit. So I put down the significant ones and was keeping a journal. And I got talking with Ray Reeser here, the director of the Museum of Natural History and a first-rate archaeologist. And Ray said, well, there's a cartography department here, and one of the non-traditional students, a little older man, he's looking for a project. And he said, would you be interested in working with them and could work on a map? Well, they took me over there and my mind was blown. There are machines that could like superimpose and shrink and, you know, it was just as marvelous. So we worked on it for quite a while and we developed that map. That's my claim to fame here. One of them is that map, you know. And I'm thinking about it. I don't know if I'll ever do it. I'm 67 years old now, and I just don't know if I'll ever get around to it. But I thought about writing a book on the place names of Wisconsin, the Menominee place names of Wisconsin. There's several books out there, Indian place names. Well, I've given talks and I told people what some of these things mean, like Wapaka. Wapaka. It's not really Wapaka. It's Wapako. Wapako. And it means place of tomorrow, where it is seen clearly. Like the Tomorrow River. There's a big hint right there. But I've heard people speak and they get up and say Wapaka, a Winnebago word which means where a deer can always be killed. I just say, oh no. You know, so there's all this, or Waiawiga, Chief Waiawiga. There was no such a person. When I said to Grandma Wasajiwan, Waiawiga, she said, Wewaka, Wewaka, old woman. I said, oh yeah, you can see it, Wewaka, not Waiawiga, but Wewaka, old woman. And there's a legend, a story. All these places that were named had a reason why they were named something. Either after people, like Kewaskum. I'm trying to think, how is it said in English?
Kewaskum?
Yeah.
Yep.
Kewaskum. Yeah, it means turns around and steps it back home. Kewa, no, turn. Kewaskum. He turns around and he steps it back home. And it was a man's name. Kewaskum. So there's reasons to it, and it was a marvelous thing to be able to ferret out a lot of this and set it down for future generations. As people on the reservation now, especially the young people, well, even most of the old people, they've never gone off the reservation too much. And to them, that's the world there. And anything outside it, they don't know much about it anymore. It's all been forgotten. There was a forced removal during the treaties. There were several treaties that were put out there by the government. 1836 for here, 1837. 3 miles west of the Wisconsin River, 3 miles east of the Wisconsin River, from Wausau to Nakusa. And that was ceded. I love that word, ceded. You know, like taken away or whatever. So and then people were gun marched over to the reservation. Now they're told you're leaving and you have no choice. Gather up your few items you can carry and get in line. And there they went. And they were given rotten flour, pig fat, and salt. And they mixed the salt and the rotten flour together and fried it in the pig fat, and there you had fry bread. You know, heart attack on a plate. But that's basically what happened to the people, and then they just forgot everything. So I wanted to bring this out again and make people proud and say, well, no, we lived here once. You know, this was our area of habitation. This is what my cousin Jim said when he, in an interview, he said, every morning when I get up, I ask myself, who am I? And he said, I know who I am. You know, he's a Menominee. Not his name, not Jim Frechette, or not the Moloco, he helps him, but who am I? I'm a Menominee Indian. You know, so, and this is where we belong. The Creator put us here, so why should we endeavor to go anywhere else? This is me talking now, that's how I feel. Why would I don't understand these people run back to Europe, to France and Italy. They're going to Hawaii, they're going all over. I'm happy right here. This is where the Creator put me in. There's plenty in Wisconsin to see. Lots of things to do and see. So I belong here. That's my sense of place. What place means to me is where you belong. Where you are, the reason you're here. The reason I'm here is I was born in Rhinelander. I grew up in Nakusa. And then, well, I was born in Rhinelander because my great-grandparents were removed to the reservation. And then they didn't want to live under government control there. And along with several other families, quite a few Menominees, they headed north. and they just left. And they went up to McCord Settlement, which was a settlement out in the woods of Menominee, Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Ojibwa, and a couple other maybe stragglers that wanted to come off from other tribes. But it was mainly those people. And for years they practiced big drum ceremony and practiced the medicine lodge and the Metawan medicine lodge ceremony, spoke the language, and no one told them what to do. They hunted, fished, gathered, how people have been doing it from a long time ago, but they incorporated a lot of modern things in. You know, they wore hats and clothing of cloth and boots, and used fishing poles and guns, and had pots and pans of, you know, metal. You know, they weren't wearing a breechcloth and running around with a spear or nothing. You know, I mean, but they still lived traditionally. Well, then eventually the McCord kind of fell apart a little bit because of encroachment, and people moved. And my great-grandfather was a fishing and hunting guide, and he moved in toward Rhinelander. And I'm forgetting the name of the place in Rhinelander, just outside of Rhinelander, the little town, Newbold.
Yep.
Oh, well then Newbold area, there was where they sat down. They had 10 kids there, and he did his thing there, hunting, fishing guide. And I was born in Rhinelander because of the area was real close to Rhinelander, so I was born in a hospital. Well, I think the first one, really. And then my dad got a job in the Nakusa mill, and we moved down there to Nakusa, and we had relatives around there also. So when I grew up to the age where I could move away, I found Stevens Point a nice place. Excuse me. And here I am. Met Karen. Here I am.
It was interesting to me what you had asked about what is place, what is a sense of place. And when I listened to Mike talk, and when I listened to a lot of the presenters during this COFAC Creates series, people talked a lot about geography. But for me, when I think about place and I think about my Oneida roots, I think about place as not somewhere that you stand, but something that you carry within you. And so I think about place in terms of the things my dad told me, the songs he played that are still in my ear. I think about my teacher, Samuel Thomas, and his mother, Lorna Hill. They're Cayugas from Niagara Falls, Ontario, and they really informed my sense of place with my understanding of who I am and where my culture comes from. So I carry that within me. I use it in terms of my decorative arts and my personal ornaments. And these things are with me no matter where I roam in the world. So through a series of social forces and historic events, my father and my mother met in Milwaukee. My mother was Croatian, my father is Oneida. They raised a family in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I ended up here, but no matter where I am, I will always be half Oneida and half Gypsy, and I will always have my homeland no matter where I go. And that is what I want people to understand when they talk about place. And place and identity are very closely wedded.